Have you ever faced a choice where doing the right thing felt like the hardest thing? Where a little white lie or a small compromise could make your life so much easier, so much richer? Today, we're diving into the incredible true story of a man who found himself at exactly that crossroads, not just once, but over and over again. This is the story of Stan, the man who was honest when dishonesty paid better. Our story begins in a bustling city, filled with the sounds of ambition and the gleam of opportunity. Stan was just like many of us, a regular guy trying to make his way in the world. He started his career in the competitive world of real estate. Fresh-faced and full of dreams, he quickly learned that the industry had its own set of unwritten rules. He saw colleagues cutting corners, bending the truth to close a deal, and pocketing commissions that felt, well, a little less than earned. It would have been so easy for Stan to follow suit. The pressure was immense. His first big test came early on. He was showing a beautiful home to a young couple, their eyes sparkling with the dream of their first family home. Stan knew something they didn't. He had overheard the sellers talking about a recurring plumbing issue, a problem that would cost thousands to fix. His boss had told him, what they don't know won't hurt them. Just get the papers signed. Stan stood there, the contract in his hand. He could almost feel the weight of the commission check. It would have paid off his student loans, bought him a new car, and given him the financial breathing room he desperately craved. But then he looked at the couple, at their hopeful faces, and he just couldn't do it. Taking a deep breath, he told them everything. The deal fell through. His boss was furious. His colleagues called him a fool. Stan went home that night with an empty pocket, but a clear conscience. He wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his career. That single act of honesty became Stan's defining principle. He decided right then and there that he would build his career on a foundation of trust, no matter the cost. It wasn't easy. He lost deals, he made less money than his peers. People in the industry thought he was naive, a lightweight who wouldn't last. But something unexpected started to happen. Word began to spread, not among the slick real estate agents, but among the buyers and sellers, the everyday people looking for someone they could trust. The young couple he'd been honest with. They came back a few months later. They told their friends about the agent who saved them from a financial nightmare. Their friends told their friends. Slowly but surely, Stan's reputation began to grow. He wasn't known as the top seller or the richest agent, but as Honest Stan. His business transformed. Instead of constantly chasing new leads, clients started seeking him out. They knew that with Stan, they weren't just getting a property. They were getting peace of mind. They trusted his word implicitly. His integrity had become his most valuable asset, more precious than any quick commission. He wasn't just selling houses anymore. He was building relationships. Years passed and Stan's success grew beyond anything his corner-cutting colleagues could have imagined. He opened his own agency, and the core value was simple: absolute, unwavering honesty. He trained his agents to prioritize the client's best interests above all else. He proved that you could be both successful and ethical, that long-term trust was far more profitable than short-term gain. But Stan's story doesn't end there. His commitment to honesty was tested again, this time on a much larger scale. A massive development corporation approached him with a life-changing offer. They wanted to buy out a whole neighborhood of modest, older homes to build a luxury house. The commission for Stan would have been astronomical enough to set him up for life. All he had to do was convince the residents, many of whom were elderly and had lived there for decades, to sell their homes for a price that he knew was well below their true value. The corporation painted a rosy picture. It's progress, they said. You'll be a hero for bringing this development to the city. They offered him bonuses, partnerships, a seat at the big table. The temptation was immense. It was the ultimate test of his principles. He could cash out, retire to a beach somewhere, and never work another day in his life. Or he could stand up for the people who trusted him. Stan thought about his journey. He remembered that first young couple, the feeling of choosing integrity over income. He remembered the families he'd helped, the trust he'd earned. He looked at the faces of the elderly residents in the neighborhood, people who saw their homes not as assets, but as the keepers of their life's memories. He made his choice. Stan didn't just refuse the offer. He went a step further. He used his own resources and expertise to help the residents organize. He provided them with independent property valuations, connected them with legal aid, and represented them in negotiations, all free of charge. He became their champion, fighting for them against the powerful corporation. The battle was long and arduous. The corporation played dirty, trying to intimidate the residents and smear Stan's name. They called him a traitor to business, an obstacle to progress. For a while, it seemed like a losing fight. Stan's business suffered as he poured his time and energy into the community's cause. Once again, his colleagues told him he was a fool, throwing away a golden opportunity. But then, the media caught wind of the story. The small-time real estate agent taking on a corporate giant to protect a vulnerable community. The story of Honest Stan went from a local legend to a national headline. Public support swelled for the residents. The corporation, facing a public relations disaster, was forced to dramatically increase their offer to a fair market value. And they included provisions for relocating any resident who wished to move. Many, now empowered and financially secure, chose to stay. The community was saved. Stan didn't receive a dime from the corporation. In fact, the fight cost him a significant amount of money. But what he gained was immeasurable. He had become a pillar of his community, a symbol of integrity. His business, far from failing, boomed like never before. People from all over the country sought him out, wanting to work with the man who was honest when it mattered most. Stan's story is a powerful reminder that the path of integrity is not always the easiest or the most immediately rewarding. It's often a lonely road, filled with doubt and criticism. But it's a road that builds something far more lasting than wealth. It builds character, it builds trust, it builds a legacy. In a world that often seems to reward the loudest and the most cutthroat, Stan's quiet, steadfast honesty shines as a beacon. He showed us that your reputation is your greatest currency and that true success is unmeasured by the size of your bank account, but by the positive impact you have on the lives of others. It proves that while dishonesty might offer a shortcut to profit, honesty is the only path to real, enduring worth. So the next time you face a choice between what is easy and what is right, remember Stan. Remember that every decision, no matter how small, is a brick in the foundation of your character. Choose to build something strong, something true, something you can be proud of, because in the end, that's the only investment that is guaranteed to pay dividends for a lifetime. Thanks so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that inspires. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a similar choice? Share your story. Until next time, stay true to yourself. It all started with a single text message. Hey, sorry, running late. Stuck in some crazy traffic. A simple, harmless lie, right? I was actually still in bed, scrolling through my phone, having hit snooze one too many times. But that one little text, that tiny white lie, was the first domino. When I finally strolled into the office, my boss, Mr. Henderson, just nodded. Traffic was a nightmare, huh? I just smiled and agreed. The day went on. No harm, no foul. The next week, it happened again. This time, I decided to spice it up. Car trouble, I texted, waiting for a tow truck. This lie felt a bit bigger, a bit more elaborate. It required a backstory. When I got to work, my colleague Sarah asked if everything was okay with my car. I had to invent a whole saga about a faulty alternator, a mechanic named Gus, and an outrageous repair bill. I was getting pretty good at this. It was almost like a game. How convincing could I be? The problem with games is that you have to keep playing. My car trouble became a recurring theme. The alternator was just the beginning. Soon it was the transmission, the brakes, the mysterious electrical fault that only happened on Monday mornings. I was weaving a complex web, and honestly, a part of me was proud of my creativity. I had an answer for everything. People at work started seeing me as this guy with the worst luck in the world. Poor Mark, they'd say. His car is a lemon. They were sympathetic, which made the lying even easier. But the web was starting to get tangled. One afternoon, Mr. Henderson saw me in the parking lot, looking at my perfectly fine car. Getting it checked out again, Mark? He asked, a hint of something I couldn't quite read in his voice. I panicked. Oh no, just making sure the tires are okay. After all the other issues, you can't be too careful, right? He just looked at me for a long moment, then walked away. The sweat on my neck wasn't from the afternoon sun. My personal life started to feel the strain too. My girlfriend Emily had planned a surprise birthday dinner for me. I was supposed to meet her at 7, but I was out with friends, lost track of time, and knew I'd be an hour late. Instead of just telling her the truth, the habit kicked in. "Hey, so sorry, Mr. Henderson just called me into a last-minute emergency meeting. Super important. I'll be there as soon as I can." When I finally showed up, the restaurant was almost empty. Emily was sitting alone, the birthday cake untouched. The look on her face wasn't anger, it was disappointment. "How was the meeting?" she asked, her voice quiet. I launched into another fabricated story, this time about a crisis with a major client, a conference call with the overseas team, the whole 9 yards. I thought I was being brilliant. She just listened, her eyes never leaving mine. The next day at work, Sarah mentioned she had called the office last night around 8 to ask me a quick question about a report. The night receptionist told her everyone had gone home hours ago. She looked at me, confused. "Weren't you in that emergency meeting with Mr. Henderson?" The air in my cubicle suddenly felt thin. I mumbled something about us taking the meeting off-site at a coffee shop to avoid distractions. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. I could feel the walls of my own stories closing in on me. The breaking point came a few days later. Mr. Henderson called me into his office. On his desk was a printout of my building's security log, entry and exit times, my times. He also had a record of my car's entry into the company garage each morning. The data was all there, in black and white. There was no crazy traffic. There was no car trouble. There was just me, consistently arriving 30 to 45 minutes late. "Mark," he started, and his voice was calm, almost sad. "I need you to tell me what's been going on." I opened my mouth to spin another tale, to talk about a faulty keycard, a glitch in the system. But then I looked at his face. He wasn't angry. He looked tired. Tired of the game I had been playing, and in that moment, I was tired of it too. But the lies didn't stop. They just shifted. That evening, I went to Emily's apartment. I told her I'd been fired. I framed it as a massive injustice, that Henderson had it out for me, that the company was downsizing and I was a scapegoat. I painted myself as the victim. Emily listened, held me, and told me we'd get through it. She believed me, and that felt worse than any punishment Mr. Henderson could have given me. She was supporting a man who didn't exist, a character I had created. For a few weeks, I kept up the charade. I'd leave the apartment every morning, dressed for work, and spend my days at the library. Aimlessly applying for jobs I knew I wasn't qualified for, the weight of it all was crushing me. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. Every time Emily asked how the job hunt was going, another lie would spill out. "Had a great interview today, got a call back from that tech firm." The final confrontation wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. Emily came home early one afternoon and found me on the sofa, still in my pajamas at 3 p.m., staring at a blank TV screen. The suit I was supposed to have worn to an interview was still hanging in the closet. There was nowhere left to run. "Mark," she said softly, "talk to me, the real you. What is going on?" And for the first time in months, the truth came out. All of it. The lie about being late, the fake car trouble, the made-up emergency meeting, getting fired, pretending to job hunt. I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a messy, pathetic confession. I expected her to yell, to cry, to leave. Instead, she just sat next to me. When I finally finished, the silence was deafening. "Why, Mark?" she finally whispered. "Why all the lies?" And I didn't have a good answer. "I don't know," I said, and it was the most honest thing I had said in a long time. It just started small, and then it was easier to tell another lie than to face the truth. That was the day my life imploded. But it was also the day I started to rebuild. It wasn't easy. Facing the consequences of my actions, rebuilding trust with Emily, finding a new job while being honest about why I left my last one was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It all started with one small, insignificant lie, and it taught me that the truth, no matter how difficult or embarrassing, is always lighter to carry than the weight of a lie you have to keep telling. Thanks for watching. Remember to be kind to yourself and to others, and we'll see you in the next one.
It started with a tiny, almost insignificant lie. Just a few words to smooth over a moment of embarrassment. I was late for the most important meeting of the quarter, the one where my team's project was up for final review. As I pushed open the heavy glass door to the conference room, all eyes turned to me. The air was thick with anticipation, and my empty chair screamed my absence. My boss, a man who valued punctuality above all else, simply raised an eyebrow. "Good of you to join us, Mark. Trouble on the road?" The truth was mundane, pathetic even. I'd overslept. I hit the snooze button one too many times, dreaming I was still in college with no real responsibilities. But saying that, admitting I'd failed at the simple task of waking up on time, it felt like admitting a much larger failure. So the lie just slipped out, smooth as silk. "Apologies, everyone." A fender bender on the bridge held everything up. Total gridlock. I even added a little sigh of frustration for effect. A few colleagues nodded sympathetically. The lie worked. It saved face. My image as the reliable, always on top of it guy was preserved. The meeting moved on, and my project was approved. I told myself it was a harmless white lie, a victimless crime. What did it matter in the grand scheme of things? Later that day, my colleague Sarah stopped by my desk. "Hey, Mark, heard about the accident. You okay? Your car all right?" My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't thought about the follow-up questions. "Oh, yeah, I'm fine." It wasn't me in the accident, just stuck behind it for ages. "You know how it is." I forced a casual smile. She smiled back none the wiser. But as she walked away, a cold knot formed in my stomach. This was the first stitch in a tapestry of deceit I hadn't planned on weaving. The next day, my boss called me into his office. "Mark, just need to fill out a report for HR regarding your late arrival yesterday. They need documentation for timekeeping, especially with the new policy." That evening, I got home and my wife, Emily, asked how my big presentation went. "It went great." "They loved it," I said, a genuine smile finally reaching my face. "But I almost missed it. Got stuck in this insane traffic jam from an accident on the bridge." She looked concerned. "Oh no, is that why you didn't answer my text this morning?" I was a little worried. I had completely forgotten her. "Good luck." Text. I had seen it, but I was in such a frantic rush after oversleeping that I ignored it. "Yeah, exactly," I said, relieved for another convenient excuse. My phone was in my bag, and I was just focused on inching forward. The lie had now seeped into my home, a quiet poison I was bringing in myself. I felt a pang of guilt, a deep discomfort. I was lying to the person I trusted most in the world, all to cover for a moment of irresponsibility. Weeks went by, and the lie about the fender bender was forgotten, at least by everyone else, but not by me. It sat in the back of my mind, a constant low-level hum of anxiety. I found myself being more careful with my words, constantly replaying conversations to make sure I wasn't tripping over my own invented stories. My natural ease with my colleagues was replaced by a guarded tension. I was so focused on maintaining the facade that I started to feel disconnected from them and from myself. Then, the real crisis hit. A critical error was discovered in the financial model for a different project, one that I had reviewed. It wasn't my mistake initially, but I was part of the team that was supposed to catch it. The potential losses were significant. My boss convened an emergency meeting. The mood was grim, a stark contrast to the triumphant 1 week earlier. He went around the table, asking each of us to recount our process and when we last reviewed the files. When it was my turn, I explained my steps, my timeline, everything. I was being completely honest. This was serious, and I knew there was no room for anything but the absolute truth. But as I spoke, I saw it, a flicker of doubt in Sarah's eyes, a slight hesitation in my boss's nod. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. They weren't looking at me the same way. It was as if my words were being filtered through a new lens of skepticism. After the meeting, I tried to talk to Sarah to strategize on a fix. She was polite, but distant. "We'll figure it out, Mark," she said, but her tone lacked the collaborative warmth we used to share. It felt like she was keeping me at arm's length. The trust that had been the bedrock of our team was beginning to fracture, and I could feel my own credibility crumbling with it. The fallout was worse than I could have imagined. While the error was eventually traced back to a data entry mistake made by a junior analyst, the incident exposed the cracks in our team's foundation. My boss took me aside a few days later. He was direct. "Mark, during the investigation, I felt a hesitation from the team when you were speaking. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the trust wasn't there. Have you given them any reason to doubt your word?" My throat went dry. The lie about the car accident, so small and distant, came rushing back with the force of a tidal wave. It felt ridiculous to even bring up. How could I connect a fender bender that never happened to a multi-million-dollar financial error? But I knew, with a sickening certainty, that he was right. The lie hadn't mattered because of its content. It mattered because it was a lie. It was a choice I made to present a false version of myself, and that choice had subtly altered how people saw me. My word was no longer solid gold. It was plated. And the plating had worn off. That night, I couldn't sleep. The weight of it all was crushing. I looked over at Emily, sleeping peacefully, and felt like a fraud. I finally sat her down the next morning and told her everything. Not just about the project at work, but about the silly, stupid lie I told weeks ago. About oversleeping, the fake accident, and how it all spiraled. I expected her to be angry or disappointed. Instead, she just looked at me with a sad sort of understanding. "Mark," she said softly, "why didn't you just tell me you overslept? We're a team. I'm on your side, even when you mess up." Her words hit me harder than any accusation could have. The truth is, I wasn't just hiding my mistake from my boss or my colleagues. I was hiding it from myself. I was so afraid of looking imperfect that I chose deception over authenticity. It took a long time to rebuild the trust I had lost. It required a level of radical honesty that was, at first, terrifying. It meant admitting when I didn't know something, owning up to my mistakes immediately, no matter how small, and being vulnerable. It wasn't easy. There were times my colleagues were still wary, moments where I could feel them questioning my sincerity. But slowly, through consistent, unwavering truthfulness, the foundation began to mend. I learned the hardest lesson of my life in those few months. A lie doesn't just cover the truth. It creates a new, fragile reality that you have to constantly maintain. Truth might be embarrassing for a moment. It might make you feel foolish or flawed, but it's solid ground. Lies are thin ice. You can glide on them for a little while, feeling clever and quick. But eventually, inevitably, the ice cracks and you're pulled down into the freezing water below. What you hide today doesn't disappear. It just stands in front of you tomorrow, waiting. And the small lie you thought you left behind? It's never as small as you think. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more reflections on life and the choices we make. Stay true.